even if they're not on board with Tartaria, the fact that there were these fires and often referred to as great, it's not a coincidence. Here we had the Great Fire of London. But if you think about the use of the word great and what that actually means, like the Great Fire of Chicago, there's nothing great about it. There's nothing great about the First World War, but it's referred to in that way as the Great War. And actually, it's because it connects to generational memory loss. So with each ancestor, if you like, the story is diluted. So what my father told me about what happened in the Second World War is slightly different, perhaps, to what his father told him about the First World War, and so on and so on. And the further down your ancestral line you go, the more likely you're going to have a very different story originally told. And so great, I think, refers to losing that knowledge and it becoming sort of like Chinese whispers. Over here, we call it a cock and bull story. It's named after two pubs that faced each other, one called the Cock, one called the Bull. And somebody would be drunk in the Cock pub, come over to the Bull pub because people that one opened first. So people would start drinking in there. They'd hear a story. They'd go over to the Bull afterwards, repeat the story, but get half of it wrong because they're drunk and it was perhaps taking place 2 or 3 hours earlier. So the story ended up being then passed around the town and it was very different to the original. And that's what's happened. And that's why they call these fires great and these floods great, because it completely removes the knowledge and information of that generation there and then. And their children dilute that even further until we get to today. So that's why the word great is used in that context. But the fact that every place had a fire or a flood is strange to say the very least. And that all of these buildings that we see around us that we refer to as Greco-Roman, all built around the same period, have these mud flood windows, these windows half sticking up from the ground,
Yes.
which people, and people say, well, that was where the servants lived or worked, and it was to let daylight in. It's far more complicated to build a floor underneath the ground than it is to raise the roof. So why would you do that? Why not just have another floor and go up? And also, I've had one of these buildings, and the original front doors were downstairs in the basement, and the basement originally was the ground floor, but the town had a flood and a fire. All the rubble's pushed into the road along with debris, and it was then covered, and everyone's ground floor became a cellar that they didn't previously have or a basement. And people need to look at that and wonder why it's it didn't just happen in their town, why it happened in every town that they Google or go on Wikipedia to check. Um, so the pattern happens across the world, everywhere within a very short period of time. Well, that's suspicious, isn't it, to say the very least? And then they're referred to as great fires. And if Anatoly Fomenko's right with the falsification of our timeline, then the Great Fire of London taking place in 1666 took place in 666. And
Yes.
then things start to make a bit more sense.
At some point, it seems absurd because there's so much of it that is just repetitive and in your face. And it seems like you can only ignore it for so long until you just go, this is more than a coincidence. This is a planned situation that has happened. And as we're facing another one, and you were talking about the digital ID, I have heard it said out there about this digital ID, which I just am, I'm not having AI. Period. Everyone knows this. I've been singing about we need to be cautious about that for a long time since university. This stuff's alarming to me and controlling, and I don't like control, and I don't like all this tracking. And it seems like the easiest way, and this, I don't know who's put it out there, but it makes sense to me, that the new digital ID will really just be easily implemented into the phones that everybody's carrying. It just seems like, if you recall, when we went from one thing to another in the past, like from checks to credit cards, a lot of people protested about going to credit cards. I remember this so clearly, and some never would capitulate with that, and they were still writing. I still know of some elders that just still function with checks, but it all happened, and the world just went on. I'm so glad to see people protesting, but they've underwritten this. It's all set up. And my memory of just credit cards, which is less dramatic as this, it just went on and people eventually had to do it. Now, I've seen over in England and parts of, is it the UN over there, just saying it's going to be a general enforcement no matter what. And there will be no options if you want to participate in society, which is kind of a biblical thing, right? Was just talking about the 666. Do you think it's going to be something as easy as it's just going to be baked into the telephones, to the cell system that's around us now?
Sorry, what do you mean? Do you mean that we're not going to be able to get out of the trap that we're all going to have to succumb to?
Well, like what I mean is, it feels like it's going to just be baked into everyone's cell phones, and that I feel like, because most people have already signed up and they have cell phones, that just to make it part of their cell phone and for the sake of ease to do anything, right? There it is. There's all your information, and you don't have to have, for the biblical people, a mark on your forehead, for example, or a separate. People hear real ID, and I think they're thinking like a card, like the cards we have now, or your passport. I'm hearing people say it's just going to be baked into our cell phones, and the cell phones are going to actually be part of the real ID. The cell phones will be the real ID.
Yeah, I mean that's possible, but then I think people will change their phones, and go back to a phone that isn't a smartphone, because there's no rule saying that a little bit like in the pandemic here, you had to have a smartphone so you could tap something to a QR code to register yourself to enter certain shops when the lockdown started to ease off. And so when I first went into a shop, I said, I don't have a phone. I said, I don't have one. I don't have a phone. I still use a landline. And they went, oh, right, okay, well, yeah, come in anyway. They didn't know what to do. No one had that conversation with them, but it's going to be the case for perhaps some people out there, and elderly people in particular are not going to necessarily have the latest smartphone. So I don't know whether putting it into our phones is going to make any difference. And also with the digital ID, during the pandemic, there were people out there, and I came across one that had an app on his phone that he'd got from Telegram that showed that he had all of the, he was up to date with all the jabs, totally up to date. So that will come out as well, because every time they bring something out, someone brings something out to bypass it or hijack it. So I don't see that being an issue. I think there'll be as many people out there with the fake one as the legitimate one.
Yes.
So I don't think it matters. And I think if it comes to that, then I would certainly ditch my smartphone. I would still, use the internet, and so on, but I would do it from home, and I would get a very basic mobile phone.
Yeah, and I'm with you, and a lot of us are with you. I'm seeing pushback everywhere, so this seems to be hitting a nerve with a lot of people, and hopefully we can get around this. But what are your thoughts as far as the trajectory moving forward? Do you think this is going to end up actually being successful?
No, I don't actually. I don't because, as I was saying earlier on, there are people out there that are, quite mainstream TV presenters that are actually fighting back when they're interviewing senior politicians about it. And that I found really surprising. So I think that it's not going to have the take up that they want. And I think they're probably going to have to do something more severe, which is why I think it'll be connected to some sort of pandemic, probably aimed at children. Um, Respiratory again, I have no doubt. And and that will then force parents to get the digital ID because they'll need it to have it in some way, shape, or form to have their children perhaps seen by a doctor, make an appointment, get what they need for their children regarding medication. I can see that the children are going to be used through perhaps a pandemic to push this through. And then we will have the World Health Organization take control due to something that was passed through Parliament the back end of May this year. So I think that that's probably what's going to happen.
So you mentioned earlier about ebooks and all this and how easy it is for AI to come in and change things up. And a lot of authors are already talking about this. This is a rumble out in the world where authors are saying, my book is somehow changed, whatever is not popular or banned, because there is a lot, at least over here, there's a lot of banning of information that's subtly going on. Certain books you cannot find and get your hands on. I've got a list of them I'm trying to get personally, and it's proving to be quite difficult. I used to be able to order through, say, like, you know, it over here it's called the UK eBay, but I used to be able just to log in through that and get stuff that I can't get here and in Canada, etc. I'm having a hard time with some of these things because I'm recognizing that AI is doing this and it's doing this at a fast rate. This is very heavy as far as, again, entraining people with false narrative. And this is not just in old literature and old books that are out there online that people may want to check out through the different archives or, just through Audible or those services. Modern writers such as yourself are talking about this. This is frightening, and this is also another sign of this kind of reset that we're seeing, where we see this patterning going back to what you're talking about with the earlier resets. AI is now implemented in this. Is there a way to get around this, besides ordering hard copy books from sources that are generating the real copies, like from the publisher, from the writer? What do we do? Do we just stop listening to audibles? Do we just stop? I'm a hard copy person, so I will always buy books, and there are a lot of us. It's growing, but I still think masses of people are not paying attention, and it seems to me like the majority of people are not paying attention, so they're getting false information or misconstrued information of, say, what your book's about by listening to an Audible or looking at a PDF. What are we doing about this?
Well, ultimately, I can see a point where they turn everything off. It'll either be some sort of fake terrorist attack, or it could be the result of war or something. But I don't believe that everything is captured in a cloud just for our convenience and just so they can monitor it. Because if you wanted to, as we know from past events, and George Orwell said that the person that controls the past controls the future, and the future that the person that controls the future controls the past. So if they could remove all of our photos, all of our music, um, old emails, all sorts of things, and books in particularly from the cloud at some point, then we have nothing because so many people read ebooks and so many people don't buy vinyl anymore. And they don't print off their photos and put them in albums, which I think we should still do. I think we really should still be doing that.
Yes.
If they turn everything off, then what have they got? They've got nothing. They didn't read books because they preferred to read on a Kindle. All their music was digital. They've got nothing. They don't have a record player. They've got nothing at all. What do they do? And so I try and urge people all the time to buy physical books because not only do you then have the original in your hand, but you can pass that on to other people.
Yes.
And that can go on for hundreds of years. And I think that there's a lot more value in that. You also own it because, of course, if you bought it on Kindle and you close your Kindle account, then you're not going to be able to access anything. They could hike the prices up for membership, and you would then leave and lose access to all of the things you've bought or half read or enjoyed and wanted to read again. So you've got to get physical books. You've got to buy vinyl. You need to print your photos off and put them in albums, even if it's just to embarrass your kids when they come around with their partner. You need to be doing that stuff. Um, we've gone the wrong way. We think that everything with the word smart in it really is, but it isn't. Anything with the word smart in it's a bloody trap. And people need to really look at that. So you need to buy the physical, and whatever it is you're buying, buy the physical version. To my mind, Kindle wasn't called Kindle by coincidence. Kindle is what you use to start a fire, and books have been notoriously burnt over the years. Um, you know, I think that Kindle is designed to push more people to to reading online, and then being able to take over the content of what they're reading and manipulate or change at will whatever they don't want people to see.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. And there's something about just tactile reality and holding a book, and book lovers know this. That there's beauty and artisan. It's just the whole experience. Having a book, cuddling up with a warm, you know, cup of tea, and getting immersed in a book, and all that is a whole experience. It's a beautiful experience. It expands our right brain as much as it does our left brain. It feels very synced. The idea of AI and its role in this changeover that's happening, what are your thoughts on it ultimately? We've seen it implemented slowly, and as you're talking about, we need to look at the patterns that have gone before us and look at the patterns and see how these resets work and all that. Do you think at some point in the past, through one of these other resets, and when we look at the magnificence of these old buildings and what we can see from the past, that AI was at play in the past?
Difficult to tell, isn't it? I mean, some people think that goes all the way back to Atlantis and that AI has been running the show for a long time. But we know that ChatGPT, for example, is 70 years old. What we don't know is what they have now. So it's difficult to tell, isn't it? For every person out there that thinks AI has always been here, there's somebody with a good argument that it hasn't. So I've no idea. It's something that I have thought about, but it's not something that I've gone into in depth because it's not an area that I really focus on. My work has really been, around Tartaria and cloning. So the AI thing is something that I dip in and out of, really, a little bit like I do with what the moon is, and whether or not we're spinning, and what's going on in Antarctica, and more importantly what's going on in the Arctic. So it's something that I don't really have much of a view on, because I haven't seen anything to substantiate any of the claims that it is, a lot older than 70 years.
And so, where we are now, though, with it, and this, of course, brings in the idea of modern cloning, but we already have the Genesis reference, so that takes it back into our history. AI is certainly here now. It's certainly on board and informing the world we live in. It's a big part of the world, with everyone now having their smart everything. And I'm with you. If it says smart, I don't want it. I'm a little bit of a Luddite. I like my gas range. I like my kitchen gadgets that are non-electric. Obviously, I'm on technology talking to you, and I love the good side, the valuable side, the side of technology that's for our betterment. But as things are rolling along, like the digital ID that we're talking about, this becomes a very dark tale. And when we're thinking about cloning and how that's moving us into this next period, something else is going on here. What's driving this? What's driving this new reset of new clones and new realities?
Well, the whole ChatGPT thing is a trap. Um, what it's doing is it's making people dependent upon it, and I can see it reaching a point where either they suddenly start charging a lot of money for it, or the only option to get that next level of information, or to have the access you have now continue, that you have to have some form of Neuralink fitted. And I think that there are people out there that probably use things like ChatGPT for either their coursework, if they're doing a degree, it could be writing for them, it could even be doing their job for them, and their boss perhaps totally unaware that ChatGPT is doing everything. So I think that that's how they'll trap people, and they'll lose that facility without Neuralink, and people are trusting it. I know people that use it for medical advice, relationship advice. This is a computer program, and people are talking to it like it's their friend and confidant, and it is a complete trap. There are 7 stages to it, with 7 being total compliance and a hive mentality, where everybody's linked to ChatGPT or something similar, and they're all being controlled. What they think, what they see, answers to questions they may have, and the information that they think they're accessing, completely controlled, and steered around what the parasites want them to believe. Um, Apparently, we're on stage 3 of that at the moment, which is acceptance. We've now accepted it into our lives as something that we use. So we're not that far away. 2032 is supposed to be the deadline for a complete submission to it. So that's not that far away. We're not talking very long, are we?
No, it's just around the corner, and the way time seems to be moving, everything seems like everything seems like it's quickening at this point, and I think this is part of the whole technological aspect that's going on. In your latest book, The Rise of the Clones, and the Cabbage Patch Kids, but The Rise of the Clones sounds fantastical. It reminds me of Star Wars, right? The Clone Wars and all this, and how is this playing out? So people are starting to get their minds around this idea. And through the work a lot of people are doing with the Cabbage Patch stuff in the past, and the massive orphanages, and sure enough, as a lot of people are tracking their genealogy, they're finding dead ends, a lot of adopted. A lot of people didn't realize they were adopted. And so there's a lot of open questions going on with this. So the rise of the clones, what does that really mean? What are you getting at?
It's inspired by Star Wars, the Attack of the Clones, and I use the title Rise of the Clones because I'm a bit of a Star Wars geek. And that's something that I thought would capture people. It's a little bit like with my first book, Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. I figured there were a lot of people out there that would immediately think of the car manufacturer and the doll, and so it's then becomes a bit of a curiosity to some people who aren't on board with Tartaria already. Otherwise, I'm preaching to the converted, aren't I? So, so really, the title of the book, Rise of the Clones, is because Star Wars is something that well, I grew up with it, and then my kids grew up with it too. So it's something that I don't know, a little bit of a geek, I suppose, with regard to it. I'm a bit of a fan. So yeah, that was the inspiration for the title. I just couldn't think of one. You know, human cloning, the history of cloning. It all sounds a bit boring, doesn't it? But Rise of the Clones, and then connecting it to the Cabbage Patch Babies because that was the favorite chapter of the first book, I thought tied in quite nicely.
Oh, it's clever. Both of them are so creatively clever and have served their purpose. And then, of course, I love the cover art too. As we move forward, though, with this cloning situation, how deep are we getting? My mind can go way, way off here. I'm sure you probably have already assessed that with me. I can go into a very dark territory with this, and yet, as was stated earlier, and then again, Genesis talks about this, but I think some people may have a hard time, I guess, reconciling that the origin story is one of cloning, and that the modern clones and all this